Hello, and we're live. Welcome everyone to the Graven back tonight. You've changed it. Yes, tonight, guys, we were meant to have Craig Stevens, but unfortunately, Craig had to pull out because he's busy. But that's totally fine. We will get him on the show. So we're completing tonight's second part of Jim Jones. Now, I'm going to move the screen about a bit, so I'm going to put Rosie up there and Nick there because they were on the show last week, and they were covering me. So I'm going to let them do the introductories, and I'm just going to sit quiet and pipe in every so often because I don't want to go over old ground that they went over. But tonight we have a guest called Insane Joe. I just said Insane Joe because that's the name that's written there. So I'm going to let these guys explain who Joe is. I'm just taking the back seat. All right, guys?
Yeah, well, for starters, let me start off with this. Joe has actually been a recurring guest on a few of our other shows here on this network. He's been quite a collaborator with us and has also become a very good friend. So Joe and I, we've actually had a lot of conversations. So, and the fact that he lives just like 2 hours north of me, hopefully one of these days we're going to actually meet up, hopefully in the future.
3 o'clock in the morning was pretty rough.
Yeah. The last conversation we had, we were talking till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go to work that morning.
Time just slipped by, right?
It went by fast. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah. Quick
Hi,
shout outs.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Mort. Hi, Lauren. Hi, Nettie. Hey, Laura. Much love to you, honey. Mort says, "Oh my God, Rosie, you're here." And Eric says, "I want that T-shirt, Joe."
We're gonna fight for the T-shirt. We're gonna all three have to fight.
You got another compliment about your hair, Rosie.
Lauren.
That's Rosie's wig and Joe's shirts are going to be probably the talks in this chat.
Let's bargain. Right? What do you call it? Let's auction them off.
Auction them. But before we get into a little bit of about Jim Jones and stuff, I mean, Joe, obviously, I know you all too well, but why don't you tell Rosie and Lois a little bit about yourself so they can get to know you? Yeah. They can get to know you.
Me?
You.
Well, as I'm pretty old. I was diagnosed with leukemia back in December 4th, 1995. They told me I wasn't going to live to see Christmas that year.
Oh, wow.
I died 5 times during that period. I've done all kinds of things as work, but I was a security officer, private investigator. So I've got an investigative background. We started the podcast in 2017. Switched to paranormal in 2019, and we've been on a roll since.
Wow.
So my out-of-body near-death experience has kind of opened my eyes to give me an open mind when we go out and investigate.
Wow.
Yeah.
You look really well, Joe.
What?
You look really well.
Yeah, but looks can be deceiving.
Inside here. You don't want in here.
The thing is, when I went through what I went through, the medical technology back then wasn't quite as great as it is now. So I went through some pretty harsh treatments that were extremely hard on the body. I went through some things that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies, and I'm just lucky I survived it and was able to walk afterwards. My friend calls me a Twinkie because I'm living past my expiration date.
That's funny.
I wasn't supposed to be alive past 40.
Yeah.
So
you would be my age then.
That would be, let's see, that would have been 16 years ago.
Oh, wow.
When I was 40. So So, but I've been through a lot, seen a lot of shit, and that's talking real life stuff. And then I've seen a few things that I can't explain.
Yeah.
When it comes to paranormal,
Just
I
a
have
few.
seen some things, and I've had a lot of fun doing what we've been doing, and I continue to do it as long as God will let me do it.
Carol.
Let me just get to. Yeah, I want to just get to some of the shout outs quickly. First off, they're still talking about your shirt, Joe. See, this is exactly. Yes, I'm sure you're being good tonight, Annette. And Lauren also wants your hats.
Yeah, the hat is unique.
Hey, Rob.
Now,
It took me a long time to find this hat.
Where'd you find it at?
That's a secret.
I knew you were going to say.
Lauren here
I'm
says,
gonna make it unique to my character, to me.
I was looking for a hat kind of similar to that. It didn't have like the red
The
and white.
shirts, well, man, I got this shirt at Wally World,
Did
or
you?
as we call it, Walmart.
I never heard that nickname before.
I have.
To be honest. How have I missed that?
Wally World.
But Lauren here says, though, that there's a reason why you're still with all of us, Joe.
Well, yeah, I'm not done yet.
Yeah. So.
And karma's got a lot to do with it, because, I feel I've got a lot of good karma, and I'm just waiting to watch some of that karma pay some people back for, what they did to me over the years. So I'm going to be able to stick around to be able to watch that and enjoy the show, I mean, I'm not a mean person or a vindictive person. I figure, they want to do bad to me. Karma's going to get you in the long run.
Definitely. I'm a big believer in karma.
Yeah,
It goes
me
around,
too.
comes around.
I believe in karma. Yeah.
Hey,
A lot of things happen
Hey,
over the
Claire.
years to make me believe that one.
Some of
I
those
don't get mad
unexplained
or take revenge anymore. I don't get even anymore. I just sit back and hope that I live long enough to watch the karma show.
And
Definitely.
Eric, by the way, he's responding to me about what I said about this nickname about Walmart. Shut
Wally
up,
World.
Eric. Yeah. Shut
Right.
up, Eric.
Eric, I used to like you, but now I'm on the fence since you tell young Nick that he's young. Nick likes to remind me how old I am.
How funny.
Oh, I get that compliment a lot too, saying I'm too young for certain things.
So obviously, I have read a bit about obviously this guy Jim Jones. It seems like wow, and it really does open your eyes about what he's done. Obviously, he's just went out and been a mass murderer. I don't know if Joe, if you've ever watched the show, but we did a show on the differences between a serial killer and a mass murderer.
Yeah, well, he's neither. He's a cult leader. That's even worse.
Right. Because I mean, there's like different. There's been like a huge discussion of exactly what subject he exactly is, like which category he fits in, and I've always kind of looked at it as more like you, Joe, like as a cult leader.
Yeah, those cult leaders are even worse. They're more dangerous than
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you take when you got to try to profile somebody, like if you worked for like the FBI or the CIA and you're a profile person, you're going to have a harder time profiling a guy like Jim Jones and realizing how dangerous he is than maybe somebody like the Unabomber or John Wayne Gacy, for example.
Right.
Or making charges stick to the person that's the mastermind behind it all, but they didn't actually.
They did that though. They did that to Manson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. Charles Manson never committed a single murder. It was never proven that he committed a single murder. but they still got him charged and sent away for the rest of his life.
For
He
multiple
died in
murders.
prison, you know. And
Yeah.
he told a reporter once, he's like, look, if I decide to start murdering people, there'd be none of yous left. Now think about how
Right.
crazy that son of a
Make
bitch
you be
was.
awake and play awake at night.
And it's literally no different. I mean, if you kind of think about it too, it's literally no different. Also, like when you see like high profile like leaders of gangs, like
Yeah.
it's basically the exact same thing. They're never going to commit the crime or touch anything directly.
And the mafia.
Like like the mafia, for example, they'll send their men out. Yes, those guys.
Cartel.
Will be,
Well, that's where a lot of it got started.
yeah.
The mafia, when it started, and they really refined organized crime to make it organized, to where you've got a hierarchy inside that organization. So this guy's got a boss that he's going to answer to, and that guy's got a boss to answer to, and so on and so forth. And then they've got a board of directors, or as the mafia called it, there was a family of 5 that ran everything out of New York.
The 5 families. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I mean, and then that paved the way for all of these other things like the Proud Boys and the Ku Klux Klan and all of them to go around and get organized, you know.
Right.
And it makes them dangerous.
Yep.
But it all started with that mafia type scenario way back in the Depression days.
Yeah.
During Prohibition.
And that makes good points. And now they're running it all over the globe, it seems, all over the world.
Yeah, it does.
Definitely.
Well, in the case with Jim Jones, I mean, I think it was definitely even worse because this, like I said, this was more of a cult. It wasn't like a gang, but they were a type of group that, and this was among one of the reasons why they wanted to move down to Guyana, because they did not want to be basically under the control, you know, like be told what to do by the government or be under their control. So that's when they set up their own settlements down in Guyana, South America. And with something like that put together, there is no law enforcement for it. I mean, yes, there probably wasn't in Guyana itself, but they were running by their own rules in governments.
Well, it was supposed to be like originally it all started because it all started that it was supposed to be kind of like a utopia because they didn't like the laws and the systems and things here back in the States. So it was supposed to be like a utopia. And then it ended up that some of those people, when they got there, they wanted to leave as soon as they got there because there was torture and all kinds of other things by this crazy fuck, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, and the longer they spent down there, the more paranoid he got. And the more paranoid he got, the more dangerous he became.
Yeah.
To do what he did.
I remember hearing about he would often read these sermons or whatever over like through a microphone. They had like speakers throughout the town, and they would just be like they would be hearing this for like the followers. They would be hearing this for hours on edge. Like it just seemed like there was never an end, and they were forced to listen to it.
Oh yeah, you could be sleeping 5 o'clock in the morning, and you'd hear like a siren going off, and the next thing you know, he's on the microphone through those PA systems. You know, I mean, the siren type thing was, you know, like a test to prepare his people for an emergency. Assault on them.
Right.
What I find most golden about this case is the fact that 304 of them were children that died.
Yes.
I mean, you've got to really question: is it right to have children in cults?
Well, I don't think, you know, the way they define cults, some of them can be, you know, most of them are extremely dangerous and others are kind of harmless, you know. But either way, I don't know. I don't think a child should be forced into that kind of lifestyle.
Right.
You know,
Definitely, without a doubt.
Not to mention not being able to like go to school and get the education that they're needing. I mean, their education be extremely limited for such a lifestyle like that.
Well, that's almost like brainwashing them because
It is.
you're teaching them what he wants you to teach them. You know, I mean, this guy, I mean, this was such a big story, it took over all 3 networks.
Oh wow.
I mean, I live here in the States and back in, what was that, 78?
1978, yes, November
Yeah.
78.
Of 78, I think it was. They had only 3 networks on the TV system. There was no cable yet.
Yeah.
And all 3 networks broke in with that breaking news story about the deaths and what was going on. And some of those images were pretty graphic. I was 11 years old back then, so I watched it on TV.
That's awesome that you got to see it on TV when it actually happened.
You know, I saw a lot of things on TV when they actually happened. I've got some amazing stories I could tell.
It's interesting to know that, like, in those days, it's just like, you know, you don't really see that on the news as much anymore. Like, they try to hide like a lot of it, but it's like
you didn't see a lot of things on the news back then.
Well, I'm talking about like as far as graphic, like images and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they warned you that the graphics were image, but they didn't show all the images that you see, like, say, in the documentaries now today.
Right.
Okay. You'd see like a quick, I mean, they put them like a quick glimpse of all the bodies, you know, where you got that aerial view of all the bodies laid out, you know, where they died, you know, parents on top of children. And, you know, it was just, you know, but the worst thing that I remember hearing, and I know this to be a fact, you know, he tells you and he's got you all brainwashed to drink that poison Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
But the son of a bitch doesn't even have the guts to drink it himself.
Right. He put a gun to his head.
He put a gun to his head.
Yeah. After everybody died, he wanted to make sure it was like he was saving himself as the best for last, and he put a gun to his head.
I think he saw exactly. I think the other thing is that he saw the agony and how long it took some of those people to die from that poison.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a coward.
And he was a coward. Exactly.
Yeah,
I thought he was a coward, and he took the coward's way out. He wasn't even man enough to take his own poison that he wanted his people to take.
And even worse, I was talking about this with Rosie last week, was the first group of people who had to take this poison Kool-Aid was the children. They let the kids take it first before even the parents did, and it was often described.
I mean, that was sick.
It was horrible, and it was often described.
What was the penalty if you interfered with that? Like, was there something that was a penalty?
He had armed people around.
Oh, yeah, they had armed guards around, and if you tried
I feel like I probably would have done it anyways. If I'm gonna get shot and killed, if I saved a kid's life or a bunch of kids' lives, I feel like I'd probably do it anyways.
Right.
Well, they would have shot you and the kid.
Yeah, essentially you were kind of in that situation that if you participated,
he wanted them to watch their kid die.
You were damned if you did, and you're damned if you didn't. You
know,
survived.
And you took it exactly as I was going to say. If you participated, you were going to die. If you tried to escape, you were going to die. The only difference was the method of dying. Either you were going to drink this poison Kool-Aid or you were going to get shot.
Mm-hmm. You know, his son survived that.
Yeah, his son did. Yeah, he did.
Jones's son survived that. He put him on he was driving the truck, and they all there was like a basketball team or something, and they were going to go play in a tournament somewhere. So he made sure his mom pretty much saved his life because she knew what was going on.
And there's a documentary.
Jim didn't want him to go.
Yeah, there was a documentary film which I think it was released, I think, on the History Channel, and Jim Jones's son is featured in it.
Oh, he's featured in a lot of those documentaries about Jonestown.
Yeah,
it's said to be At times, he would put other children into life-threatening situations to tell them, and tell them he was guided by the angel of death. You know, he was already committing pranks in the churches he attended as a boy, um, and he claimed that he'd stolen the minister's Bible and had covered Acts 2.38 with cow manure. He also asserted that he substituted a cup of his own urine for the holy water once at a Catholic church. Though they had sympathy for Jones because of his poor circumstances, his neighbours reported that he was an unusual child who
He
was obsessed
was.
with religion and death.
He
One
was.
of his biographers suggested that he developed his unusual interest because he found it difficult to make friends. Though his strange religious practices stood out most to his neighbours, they actually reported that he misbehaved in more serious ways. He stole candy from merchants in the town. His mother was required to pay for his thefts. Um, and the way basically he spoke, greeting his friends and neighbours by saying "Good morning, you son of a bitch" or "Hello, you dirty
Yeah,
bastard."
I remember hearing
Jo-
that.
Jones's mother usually beat him for it. And then he developed an intense interest in religion. He became a reader who studied Adolf Hitler, Marx, Gandhi. He would tell his wife that Mao Zedong was his hero. So it seems that he's been quite disturbed.
He pretty much was right from the very beginning. I mean, he had a lot of problems even when he was growing up, and when the religion's interest started, I think that was basically slowly but surely the beginning of his religious insanity.
Yeah, but do you realize how many people go through some form of abuse or mental abuse and they actually turn out just fine?
Yep.
And
These,
sometimes,
I was one of them.
and
mean,
sometimes even very successful. You
Yeah,
know,
Joe, you and I were talking about the other night, and it is true. I mean, a lot of people, like, I had rough time growing up, and there's a lot of people overcome bad childhoods, but still
right?
manage to
It
make it
still
and have a
should be
successful life.
used in a case like this. This shouldn't be used as an excuse for what he did.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
I am still anti abuse though. No matter what the effect of the person,
well,
I don't think
right,
anybody
but
should be abused.
still, lock the son of a bitch up,
Yeah.
at an early age, or get him some help, or
Or therapy.
Or
you
therapy.
can't
Kind of
blame it on
therapy.
society or his abuse all the time. That's just like passing the buck.
He could have had a mental illness that was undiagnosed, also probably being back in
Who
the
knows?
70s.
But there was plenty of red flags,
Yeah.
and somebody should have done something.
But
At that Jonestown before that massacre happened.
And,
definitely.
I think the worst part of it is, and Sarah actually made a good point about something here. She wrote down they would practice something he called the White Night, which was code for when they had to take their own lives. But before they committed the Jonestown massacre, was that, and even prior, before they moved to Guyana, my brother, he knows a lot of this stuff too about Jim Jones. He explained that in spite of his insanity, especially when he was still living up here in the States,
California.
Yeah, and then eventually he was also at one point in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I think that's where they started.
It was California before he went to Guyana or whatever that is.
Yeah, Guyana.
Guyana.
Yeah, so Jim Jones, as crazy as he was, at the same time though, he was just such a manipulative character because he was basically everybody. He was trying to be that person everybody liked, and among one of the things that made him so unique was that he was someone who was like, especially when he was living in Indianapolis, like during the early stages of when he was building his cult, was that he was often someone who mingled with different people of different races, which despite Indiana being a northern state, unfortunately there was a lot of still racial segregation at that time. So no offense, like Indiana was kind of like a southern state wannabe, if you will. But at that time, he was among one of those rare white people, I guess you want to say, that actually was more than happy to welcome people, both black, white, Hispanic, whatever, race didn't matter, and that's what made him such a likable person, despite his insanity that he had. And that's why if you look at a lot of the people that moved his followers, the majority of them were African American.
A majority of those people that died down there too were African American.
That's right.
My grandma had a word for a guy like him.
Yeah,
bullshit.
I've got a quote for him commenting on his childhood. He said, "I was ready to kill by the end of 3rd grade. I mean, I was so aggressive and hostile, I was ready to kill. Nobody gave me love, any understanding. In those days, I was supposed to go with a child to school functions. There was some kind of school performance and everyone's parent was there but mine. I'm standing there alone, always was alone." So that's all he's trying to get people to feel sorry for him. Almost trying to obviously manipulate. And I think also, if I'm right, he done some charity work, and I do believe he's probably tried to hide behind that as well, so that people see him as this good guy, won't do nothing wrong type guy. He's very, very intelligent, very, very manipulative.
He learned how to manipulate people. That was
he did.
Secret. He'd see what your vulnerability was, and he'd take advantage of it, mentally. And then he'd have you. You were hooked. I mean, most of those people, I don't understand it, and I don't think I'll ever understand it. I mean, this isn't the only one where you've had like a mass suicide, take place like this because of a cult leader. Right. I don't understand how people let themselves get that manipulated and brainwashed to go that far in the first place.
Can I answer that? Right, this is my theory in the whole cult thing. I think people like Charles Manson and Jim Jones, they look for maybe the most vulnerable.
Yep.
And as we say, like for example, I'm going to use you as an example, right? So, say today I met Rosie, and Rosie gave me a life story, and I'm just going to use you as prime example, and you tell me that you're like I don't want to offend you. Your mum and dad are still living, aren't they?
No, my mom is, but you can say it. It's okay. I'll be fine.
Right. So I say, like, Rosie tells me her life story, tells me how hard it was, tells me that none of her parents loved her, right? So I'm going to manipulate her by saying, well, why don't you come hang out and I'll show you the rule. Bear in mind, I'm younger than Rosie, but I'm going to be older than Rosie in this scenario, right? Come to mine and I'll make you a...
Sorry, I saw that Eric Rosie was turning you on cult, and I was like, we're going to be called the ice cream cone unicorn cult.
I say
it's just
I
don't think it makes sense. That
somebody. But I can say everything to Rosie that she's always wanted to hear, and then Rosie's going to believe that. Yeah. And the more I tell Rosie how wonderful is, how lovely, I love her, and she's going to start believing it. So I can see how the cult, from a psychological point of view, if somebody keeps telling you something, yeah, exactly, took advantage.
Would they have done those when they started noticing him being abusive and reneging on all of the niceness? That should have been like a red flag, and I would have.
Well, it was a red flag to some of them, but when you've got these guys sitting around with automatic rifles,
and
they got ordered to shoot the minute somebody steps out of line, you're going to be scared. I mean, they used that. They used the fear. All of them did. Jim Jones used fear. Charles Manson used fear. They knew how to use it and use it to their advantage as well. Yeah,
it's just like it was practically a way to keep everybody in line, because like you said, Joe, someone tries stepping out and didn't want to be part of this anymore. That was literally a death sentence at that point. it
These
didn't matter if
people
it
had
was
to
a kid
have
or
been
an
pretty
adult.
broken though to take their own lives to begin with, because I've been pretty down that rabbit hole before,
Mm-hmm.
and that was just on my own. But I don't think I could ever let somebody manipulate me into doing something like that, or killing somebody, or going against my morals, or my, what I believe in.
But some people are
Maybe
just
that's
too
because
clever,
I'm
Joe.
too strong of a person too strong of a willed person to not give in to that crap.
Right. Well, you see, I think this actually goes back to what I was just saying a few minutes back before about like how the majority of his followers were mostly black. If you think about it, a lot of, especially in those days, a lot of African Americans didn't really have the best homes that they were living in. They didn't
Yeah.
have the good, as
Yep.
good of homes as like maybe white residents may have had. So when Jim Jones would offer this utopia, this paradise, they thought they'd be able to escape like either the rough streets, or they would be able to not, be in a better home. It's like what they didn't seem to realize was what they were getting themselves into was much, much worse
It's more
than,
like slavery. They had
yeah,
to build
like
that
it was
down.
like
Yeah.
slavery, and it didn't, and even worse, it didn't because there were white followers too. It didn't matter at that point whether you were black or white. It was no matter what race you were essentially you were a slave to this.
Yeah, you were working from the time the sun came up till the time the sun went down.
And kids too. It wasn't always just the adults.
Oh yeah, it was, and then a lot of them, if they had like some kind of, monthly check coming in from Social Security or a pension or something like that, they had to sign that over to the bastard.
Yep. So he collected a lot of their money too.
Yep. Oh yeah, he did.
See, Irene here says people seek a sense of belonging. They will attach to anyone who shows them what others can't. She's absolutely
Yep.
right.
Definitely.
And Eric also makes a good point. He's referring to like both Jim Jones and Charles Manson. These weirdos aren't stupid, just insane.
Oh no.
They're smart to be able to do that.
I mean, you think about it. If you look back at Manson's story, for example, and I've got a fascination with him, Nick, and you know why.
Yeah.
That's a funny story. Anyway. But he was institutionalized at an early age. And so what he learned from reading all those books, because he had nothing but time on his hands while he was spending all that time in jail for all these juvie crimes that he was committing, like stealing cars and so on and so forth. He learned while he was in jail how to manipulate people. And he'd tell you that. And he also told you that he trusted the people in there because if they were going to stab you with a shiv, they'd tell you they were going to do it.
Yeah.
So he didn't like the outside world and people on the outside to begin with after a certain point, but he was institutionalized.
Mm-hmm.
And then he took advantage of the system by, he was a smart guy. He just got smarter and learned how to manipulate people while he was in prison.
Absolutely.
And then he took advantage of it when he got out. Hence his following, and then the Sharon Tate and La Bianca murders, where he didn't play it, and he didn't commit a single murder.
Never touched it, but obviously was still just as responsible for those murders.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that's the scariest thing too. Is, and Rosie, we were talking about this last week. I said this last week on the show, but it's like what's so unsettling is that these cults, they're always led again by one person who's in total control of these other people, and these guys they made the rules, and if you were willing to follow them, then obviously it's quite clear that they were in control of you at that point.
Well, yeah. They've got a hierarchy too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, there was a woman that was married to one of the survivors from the Jonestown thing. Okay. And he said he basically said something about her name was really Linda, but because somebody else's name was Linda. Anyway, so she had to change it. She ended up becoming Jim Jones's right-hand person. One of them. They got like a, even Manson had a small little inner circle that he really trusted. but he didn't let them know that he trusted them that much. See,
Like an underboss in the mafia.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. A little higher. It's like a hierarchy. Even the cults have
Like
got
Sammy
those
the
little
Bull.
hierarchies. You know, look at that. A perfect example of that, because they even broke down the hierarchy in that one, is that Nexium cult, that sex cult.
Oh,
That,
that's
Which is from where?
I think it's the FLDS or something like that. I can't remember. I don't know if that's the right.
the one that Allison Mack got charged with.
Oh, that one.
Nexium or something like that.
Yeah, I know it.
I'll
I
have to
can't
look
remember
that
the
up.
name
I
of
don't
it.
know anything
I know
about
what you're
that
talking.
one.
They burned some of the women in that one like cattle
Oh my god.
with their initials.
Oh, they
two leaders.
branded them. I thought you meant like they
Yeah,
charged.
no,
them.
branded.
Allison Mack
Gee.
got charged in that because she was like she was in that
How
hierarchy.
can you How can you? I'm gonna not say the words I want to say, but blankety
You,
blank blank pieces of
you,
blank.
you should, because
No.
it was said in 1960 that India, I can't even say that, Nick, help me.
Oh, what is it?
It's, in fact, no, reading the wrong bit. Mayor Charles Boswell appointed Jones director of the local Human Rights Commission. Jones ignored Boswell's advice to keep a low profile. However, he used his position to secure outlets for his views on local radio and TV programs. It's amazing what this guy has done to manipulate. The mayor and other commissioners asked him to curtail his public actions, but he totally refused. He was wildly cheered at a meeting at the NAACP in the Urban League when he encouraged his audience to be more military, by shouting, "Let my people go." During his time as commissioner director, Jones helped to integrate churches, restaurants, the telephone company, a police department, amusement parks, God knows a whole list of them. Jones walked through the neighbourhood, comforting the local black community, and counselling white families not to move. He set up sting operations in order to catch restaurants which refused to serve black customers, and wrote to American Nazi Party leaders and passed their responses to the media. And in 1961, Jones suffered a collapse and was hospitalised. The hospital accidentally placed Jones in its blackboard and he refused to be moved. He began to make the beds, empty the bedpans of black patients. So you see, it's quite ironic. He's built this, almost like this build this trust, and people thought high him, and you just think, wow, it's terrible.
Well, and another thing to point out too about all these things that he had done, and I'm actually just looking this up too, by the way, for um, the massacre that occurred was I can't remember what station it was that before they even committed the mass suicide, there was a television station that was there that I think documented some of the activities at Jonestown, and as they were boarding a flight with, in fact, a few members of Jonestown that wanted to leave with them, which
that was also a governor was with them as well.
Governor. I can't remember the full names of everything, but I know exactly. But as they were boarding the flight, that's when some of Jones's men came and just fired. I mean, and what's again the scariest part about this whole thing was that it's not like what you see sometimes with other mass murders and suicides where they didn't wait to the cover of darkness to do this. They did this in broad daylight.
They did that in broad daylight. Yeah. That's just it. But he had them so convinced because the guy was so paranoid that the establishment was coming to get them.
Right.
That's what it was. I mean, he had them fearful of the United States government. He had them already, although he had his followers convinced that anybody outside of Jonestown was an enemy.
Right.
You know, your family, if they didn't live there, they're an enemy.
Yeah.
The government of the United States, they're an enemy. You know, that's the way he was playing it. He got
Right.
more and more paranoid after they moved out there to Jonestown. And the
Well,
more he got paranoid, the worse things got.
It did. Oh, and did you know, I told Rosie this, did you know this, Joe, that originally, Lois, I don't know if you know this either, but before they moved to Guyana, Guyana was not the original choice where they wanted to move. Jim Jones originally had the idea of wanting to move either to China or to the Soviet Union. But unfortunately, I guess for him, either I don't remember what the reason. I don't think it was because neither country wanted them over there because of what he was trying to establish, or they just did not have, the transportation or money they needed to get over to those countries. So Jim Jones,
Well, I think it was because they had to leave in a hurry.
they probably did, but Jim Jones later, before he died, had said that he was actually heartbroken because he wanted to either move to China or the Soviet Union. So Guyana in South America became basically, I guess you can kind of say, a backup location, and that's when that's where they settled Jonestown.
Well, they had to
I
bail
think-
out of California quickly
Yeah, they did.
because he got heads up or something that kind of like they did in Waco. They got heads up that they were about to be raided,
Yeah.
And he took off. There was like 3 or 4 buses, and they drove from California all the way down to wherever Jonestown is.
Right.
I think also what you've got to bear in mind is where Jones picked the countries he would love to go to. He knew he wouldn't get away with as much shit in America. So that's why he's picked these different places so that he could obviously get away with as much as he wanted to.
Basically, go to countries where there wasn't as much government or law, or like a lot of security or police or whatsoever. He wanted to basically.
That's a smart idea.
Yeah,
if you're a cult leader, that's a smart idea. He knew what he was. He knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why he wanted to go to those countries. That's why he was preferring China or Russia. Communist country, he would have been able to get away with a hell of a lot more.
Oh yeah, they Sorry, I just got a private message from Rosie saying where she is. Yeah, because and obviously those are countries that, even though Jim Jones, obviously was an American to begin with, these were countries that he was going to that, like you said, Joe, no matter how much crime he had committed or whatever the case was, he would not be extradited back to the United States.
Yeah. Exactly.
So some of the comments here.
Girl, they sell body parts on Facebook now. Okay.
Oh, really?
Have you read the news lately? Yeah.
No.
There's
No,
a lady.
I haven't.
There's a lady from here that was charged. She's been arrested and charged with selling $11,000 worth of body parts that were cut up because she goes to school and she has access to the body parts, and after they use them for learning, then they're supposed to burn them and cremate them, but instead she was stealing these parts and selling them to some guy in Pennsylvania.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's
I just think
crazy.
that's morbid, and I wonder, why did he want these body parts? But it said that he was reselling them, like marking them up and then reselling them to who, for what? You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Like, what sick civilian person wants some random stranger's body parts?
The only thing
I know.
The only thing I could think of, and this is kind of like a century-old kind of law break, if you want to call, crime, if you will, is because if you look at 100+ years ago, people used to grave rob, and they usually did it for selling them for medical research, which the way how they did it was illegal. So maybe it was for medical research. I'm not sure, but that's the first time I've heard of a crime like that in several years.
It's crazy.
Oh,
She was going to school at the University of Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
Oh God.
Now, Cliff here says, former members said Jones became more extreme, manipulating his congregants with blackmail and administering humiliating beatings to those who displeased him. Former members also said he abused drugs and alcohol. Punishment became a normal
Seems like
thing.
he was like Hitler. Like he
Yeah.
resonates so
He
much with
thought
So
he was.
see, that's part of the manipulation. I mean, that's exactly how Manson did it. He was using drugs
Yep.
as well as, mind control, and then, I mean, look at it. You see some of those videos where the dogs had to eat before the women could eat.
Right.
That was terrible.
That is sick.
Well,
Guys, I need to go off because my tablet is due to die.
No, you can't go.
Shut up, shut your face, Joe.
No, ma'am. You have no permission.
I just want to say quickly, thank you so much, Joe, for coming on and taking the time to actually come on. I will appreciate it. I'll leave you guys to it. Just quickly, tomorrow night's a big one for Frighteners, guys. We are doing a dementia and Alzheimer's awareness
Yep.
in light of Bruce Willis and Chris Hemsworth. So tune in, guys. It will be quite an emotional show, but definitely. But thank you to these two. I don't know what I would do without these two above me. But thank you for so much for what you guys do as well. No, it's just me, Cliff. It's gone. Nobody else.
Good.
But you take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Yeah, Les, I'll see you tomorrow.
Sleep tight.
Bye, 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 bye.
So to just catch up on, I'm trying to catch up on all the comments here. Now, Irene actually just brought this up. Joe, if you don't know who Irene is, she actually lives in Japan. She explains that we have the same occult, Shingri, if I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, kill people with sarin gas. You guys know what that is? Or
Yes, I watch NCIS, so I know what that is.
Matsumoto Chuzo was hung to death. Oh, I didn't know that Japan still had the death penalty over there.
Wow.
He forced people not to eat little food as possible and meditate long hours, and people gave all their money to the leader. So it's exactly the same situation as it is again, like with Jim Jones and Charles Manson in a way. It's another cult leader.
That one sounds pretty evil.
I can't even imagine what it would have been like, in this case.
I mean, I'd hate to run into some of those and I'm not trying to be racist, but I'd hate to run into some of those cults or gangs from any Asian country. Those guys probably know how to kill you in ways that would make you suffer for a very long time before you die.
I've done a lot of that history. They don't mess around.
And just ways that we probably can't even imagine. That's just unthinkable. I would be terrified to run into some of those people. I'd be thanking God and kissing the ground if I got out alive after meeting one of those people.
Yeah. I mean, again, you look at history through those type of groups. I mean, they're probably the most feared. They don't mess around at all. I mean, in fact, actually, Irene just put this here. She said, tell you the truth, they don't touch regular people.
I was wondering what Cliff said. If anybody had done that, he said former member Deborah Layton wrote an affidavit begging the United States government to get involved, that 1,000 people were being held against their will in Jonestown, and that Jones was a monster and had lost his mind, she said. I was wondering if anybody had done that. I knew somebody or family.
People were trying to get the government's attention, but because he was where he was, they had a hard time, doing anything about it. But that one governor took a plane down with some reporters, said that if anybody wanted to leave, because he got word that they were being held against their will, and there was torture going on and all this other shit going on, that he would fly them out of there. And that also caused the shootout.
Right.
Because at this time that this happened, Jim Jones was extremely paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
And he was still using his manipulation even towards the end, because
anybody from the government was
the enemy.
Number one.
Well, what's even worse, and I remember seeing this in the documentary film, I think they did it exactly the way how it occurred was as some of these followers were leaving Jonestown, Jim Jones would come out to all these people and try to act like he's this peaceful looking guy. He's like, if you guys ever want to come back, you guys are more than welcome to. What they didn't realize was that there was no turning back.
Oh, no. And think about how sick this bastard was. He knew what was coming when he sent his son off, all right, to that basketball game and stuff. He was trying, according to his son in one of those documentaries, he was trying to get his son to stay.
Right.
Was he really?
With him.
Yeah, he did.
So he could go with him?
Yep, so that he could die with him. So he was willing to kill his own son. I mean, that guy had no.
Yeah, but that's not the same,
for
Irene.
everything
That's
he
not the
did.
right to religion. That's not the right to practice religion. That's like something else.
No, and so he has no remorse for anything he's done.
No, he didn't.
You
He
know?
was just basically an absolute monster.
That's
Dude,
one thing that I have a curiosity about is why that the people want their children to die with them. What is in their mind going on at that moment?
Well, you know,
Where that they think, is it like in the Egyptian days? You know what I mean? Like you thought that if
I
they
don't
were
know where that
buried
comes
with you or
from, but
something, or they went with you, that they would go on in an afterlife and continue life with you, or what?
Or
What's
it could
going on?
also be, there could be another possibility. I don't know if this is correct, but it might also be because if they die young, they would probably stay young forever. Like they would be, like if they were like, let's say, a 10-year-old kid. If they died at 10 years old, they would be forever 10 years old. They would never grow old. They would
Yeah.
be free spirited. They'd be young. They wouldn't have to worry about getting older or being an adult. I mean, I don't know if that's what Jim Jones's beliefs were, but
I don't think he had any beliefs.
Yeah,
I really don't. I think he was a narcissist.
Yeah,
I think he was
power.
too. That was what I was going to say when you first
You
started
know,
talking about
I
him.
think he was
He had
a narcissist
narcissistic personality
in search of power.
disorder. Yeah.
You know, he wasn't like that leader, that cult leader for Heaven's Gate, for example, where they believed that committing the mass suicide that they committed, they were gonna enter some type of other life behind that Halley's Comet.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was, because it had something to do with the Halley's Comet, if I remember right, Heaven's Gate and their little cult, what they believed in. You know,
right.
But still, he was no better than Jim Jones. You know.
Now, Irene also said this. I didn't even think about this when I mentioned about the original choices of where Jim Jones wanted to go. According to Irene, he said that she's saying that if Jim Jones had chosen China originally, he would have been killed in front of a firing squad, be hacked up for body parts because they sell organs in the black market.
Yeah, if that's the case, you know, that might have made him look like a martyr or something.
Yeah.
Or whatever they call that, because he dies for the cause, you know, being shot.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have been able to control everything. And in his last breath, him taking the gun, it's almost like they explain it like he was in control of all those people's lives. He told them what to do. He controlled everything. And then at the last minute, he controlled his own life.
Well, that's like a sign of a narcissist.
Yeah, or a serial killer.
Cliff makes another good point. That, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where it was that he said that, but there was another reason why he always wore dark glasses, because of the drugs gave him red eyes. And I could see that, you know, very bloodshot in a way.
Okay, that guy was a nutcase for sure. I mean, to manipulate people to do things that they probably normally wouldn't have done otherwise is just sick.
Yeah, it is.
You know? And it takes a sick person to do that. It really does.
Yep.
You know?
Mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically.
And in these cases of like him and Manson and that, these guys were narcissists, basically just in search of power. They were getting a rush off the power of controlling these people and getting them to do their bidding. You know, no matter how bad it was, you know, how bad that his bidding was. I want you to go and kill these people, or I want you to kill yourselves. These people did it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's pretty you know, that's pretty sick.
It is. It really is.
You know, and it takes a sick mind to wanna even go there.
What's the most sick thing is they could have just took their own life if it was that terrible and it was that miserable that they had to micromanage all these other human souls and lives. And why didn't they just kill themselves and then
Because
all those other people could live?
They got off on it.
Yeah, I
They
think
got
so
off
too.
on
That's why I
it.
thought they had to
That's
have
it.
that control. Like they had this like sad
Yeah.
self-image, and they
They
masked
got
it
off
with
the
this
control
powerful
and-
position and controlled everybody.
And the way it made them look like, they probably looked in the mirror and thought of themselves as a god.
Yeah.
Right. Here's something. This was probably another response to like what you were asking, Rose, or what Irene just said. More like the children would be pure and whole with God when they were killed. That was probably another reason why they started with them first. Now, according to Sarah, she says that he had a house in another part of the country, which at the time there was 2 women and kids there. And when he called White Knight, he radioed the house and told them they had to act. One of the women killed herself and the kids, but one survived. I think I've actually heard of that story before. It was
One of those women, because they had that's the only place that they also had a phone on the property or whatever. One of those women was the one that was her real name was like Linda, but because there was something about the name Linda, she changed her name. But she also divorced her. Her husband left before all this shit went down. He was one of the survivors, but she was in that house, part of that house. I was watching that on the documentary, and
I wonder if that was his mom's name, Linda.
I don't know, but between Jim Jones and the woman, there was something about a dispute that another woman had that name Linda.
They didn't like it.
Pissed off about having that this one had the name Linda, so Jim Jones told her to change the name, and she did, or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Eric here says they thought they were hitching a ride with aliens, Heaven's Gate. They thought they were going on the mothership.
Right, yeah, and it was like, and it had something to do with the timing of the Halley, that comet.
Yeah.
Haley's comet, yeah.
Hale-Bopp. Was it Haley's or Hale-Bopp? Was it Haley's?
I think it's Haley. I think it was Haley's comet.
Was it?
Yeah, it was Halley's comet. It's like once every 75 years or something. I was alive during then too, watching that.
China has strict rules, and she's God, the Holy One. I think she's referring to. I think she's referring to like the laws they have in China. And if I'm correct, I don't know if it's the. I'm not sure what the.
I don't know what Z is or Z.
Z. I'm not sure. Yeah. Net here says pure fear would have made the people unable to think or function normally.
Well, yeah, fear.
That's true.
Is a if you can manipulate somebody's fear, that's a powerful thing.
It actually reformats their brain. I've seen like people do like presentations to show what the brain looks like before abuse and what it looks like after abuse, and your brain is completely different after abuse.
And even at times, there was also a few cases where even when their mentality had fully changed, when it got to the point where up until the massacre was about to begin, it's like something in some of these people, eventually they snapped out of it and they came to that realization of what was about to happen. And there were actually a few who even try to get Jim Jones to change their mind, like, think about what you're going to be doing to these kids or these elderly or the people who are still sick or are injured or whatever. And it just showed it's like his society, or no matter again what age, what race, what gender, it didn't matter to him at all.
Anything anybody said to him after a certain point fell on deaf ears.
Yep.
The guy basically was a narcissist. Everything he was doing, he thought was the right thing to do, and nobody was going to be able to change his mind.
His father was an alcoholic and worked as a mystic fortune teller.
That's where he learned the gift of the silver tongue, right there.
Okay, I didn't know that.
He was a bullshit artist.
Yeah,
con artist. Yeah, that's what they call
it. Artist. You get somebody to believe your bullshit, and you're good at it. Think about things you can get away with.
Right.
Pretty much anything. Pretty much almost anything.
Right. You can get somebody to believe just about anything. My dad was a bullshit artist. He was an alcoholic and a bullshit artist. You know, I mean, he was a good man. He did things, you know, but he bullshitted. He exaggerated things a lot, you know, and told some pretty serious stories there that I knew weren't true. But he'd tell them, and he'd get these people to believe him, you know.
I'm kind of glad my dad wasn't like that. He was a little bit off because he was in Vietnam and he had really bad PTSD, but he didn't lie about anything, and he didn't.
Oh, I learned a lot watching my dad, you know, because I don't drink, you know. I try to be as honest as possible, and that goes with trying to, you know, believe in karma. You know, you got to have good karma. You know, you want to have good karma at the end. You know, that's probably why another reason I've survived so long, besides me telling everybody I'm a vampire and I'm going to live forever. Oh, y'all.
Do you twinkle in the sunlight?
I wish. That's kind of cool, isn't it? I've seen that
Diamond.
movie that you're referencing.
Yeah, like your skin looks like diamonds in the sun.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
It would be cool.
Yeah.
Then I would probably listen to something you had to say if you did. I'd be like, he knows everything. His skin is diamonds. He's, you know, he's not like anybody else in this world. I'm listening to him.
Because of what I went through being like a blood cancer, and I used to work third shift, and I like eating my meat basically, you know, the beef products basically almost raw.
Yeah.
You know, my brother used to call me a vampire, so I kind of.
Were you anemic?
No.
No, you just liked it that way. I like it that way, but I've been anemic multiple times. I've been diagnosed with anemia.
You
I
know.
just write it off as that's probably why. Or I'm weird.
Now,
So-
Cliff said this was something I think kind of in reference to what Lois was saying earlier. Jim Jones was described as really weird kid when he was obsessed with death. I didn't remember Lois said that earlier. He used to hold funerals for small animals, and it also stabbed a cat to death.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my God.
Only thing I ever killed was, and look at to kill is a deer. Man, I think about the venison.
I think to survive is a different like ethos. To survive or live, or you know, like to consume it is different than doing it just because you like enjoy.
Yeah, I
control over its life. You know,
that's the worst part of it. I enjoy the venison, but I don't know if I could actually. You know, I don't think, you know. I went deer hunting. I shot at one. I hit it once, but we never got it because, you know, I think I hit it in the hoof. We figured like where the hoof meets the leg, because we followed the blood track for a while and it was stumbling, but never caught up to it. But I think the hardest part for me would be gutting that sucker.
Yeah.
You know, I could shoot it. I'd have no problem shooting it because the only thing that's on my mind is venison steaks and eggs as soon as possible.
yeah, or jerky, chili,
Oh
enchiladas.
no, I liked all of that too, but my favorite was my dad used to cook venison steak and eggs.
That sounds really
After
good.
we got
That actually sounds like my dad. He gave me grizzly bear one time. I have no clue where he got grizzly bear, but he was like, "You want to come over?"
I bet that would be good.
It was, but it was really weird, like a different taste. And he had boiled it in vinegar, I want to say, before he prepared it the next step to get like all the blood out of it or whatever. But he would like have squirrel and I don't know, all different kinds of things. He was a very
well. I living in Wisconsin, and I was I spent a few years with my dad. We ain't gonna go there, but his wife's mother at the time lived on a farm. You know, so she was like raised on a farm and stuff. And when we go out there, there was some strange dishes that were made.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, like turtle soup, fried turtle.
I think my dad made turtle something.
And yeah, I was forced to try some of that at least once. And if I didn't like it, I didn't have to eat it again. But oh my God. Some of it was okay, and others it's just like, no, thank you.
Yeah. Irene says she loves deer meat. They also have boar meat there too. I didn't know they actually made meat from boar too. I mean, I know it's a type of pig, but
well, I've tried bison. Have you tried bison?
I have not. I don't even know really where we can get it, honestly, but I've not had it.
A meat market probably would have it. Like if you went to a butcher shop.
I had a bison burger at a restaurant once, and it was really good.
Yeah, there's one restaurant that makes those.
Oh, Lauren has. Okay.
Fuddruckers, I think. I don't know if it's a chain or not, but.
Eric says he's like the same thing too. He shot a squirrel once, and that was the last time he ever shot anything. Turtle stew, bear hamburger, squirrel stew. I don't even know what that is.
Black bear hamburgers and squirrel
stew. Oh, it's a couple different things. Okay.
3 different things, yeah.
Yeah, you get in the States, there's people who eat some weird shit, man.
According to Irene, wild pigs are a problem. In the mountains, you can get deer meat grilled poisonous snake.
Well, think of some of them people that probably that do eat possum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I know you. I know, Nick, you're pretty young, but when I was growing up, there was a show called The Beverly Hillbillies.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that. I've never seen it.
Granny made some pretty disgusting sounding things on that show, but you get down into those areas of Tennessee and Kentucky and stuff like that, those people were probably thinking, oh, yummy.
Alligator, yeah.
Alligator.
You know, I guess it all depends on where you live.
Yeah.
You know, what you might find appealing.
I would rather have seafood over anything, but I darn sure don't live anywhere near the sea.
I don't like a whole lot of seafood. I like poor man's lobster. I like baked cod.
I like crawfish.
I mean, the closest thing we have at this point, like for us over here, because since obviously I live close to the city, is Lake Michigan, obviously.
They got a river here. They got a river here not too far from where I live that it's actually called Crawfish River.
Really?
Really?
For the reason
I would have been in there when I was a kid. I would have been all up in there all the time.
And for the reason is because the thing, they get a lot of crawfish out of that river, and it got named that.
Eric lives in Wisconsin too.
Yeah, he does. I forgot to mention that earlier. Eric lives in Wisconsin, but
where in Wisconsin?
I think he said he lived close to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, I think he said he lived a little bit more closer to the Wisconsin-Minnesota border. I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, I've been out that way too.
All right, sushi whale in Japan. There was actually a comment I wanted to go back. I wanted to share earlier. This was when Lois was still on with us, and this is of course also going back to Jim Jones. And this is something that you don't really hear it too often. Oh, here it is. It was Mort Alley. He said it was a shock to the Guyanese people too, because her parents didn't even know until it was in the newspapers. And that's the thing too. I remember. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I remember that that some of those people were saying that they didn't even know some of their people were members or people were there or didn't even know that they were alive or dead. It was a shock to everybody.
Yeah, because for the majority of responses that I get, usually it was always from people in the United States, but you never really heard too much, obviously, from the people of Guyana themselves. So I'm sure, considering, of course, it also happened in their own country.
He didn't stop recruiting after he left the States.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those guys that were carrying those rifles, they were natives.
Yeah.
They were from there.
Those guys that were carrying those rifles.
They weren't.
What was that code word? What was that code word? White Knight?
White Knight. Yeah.
When they used that code word, they'd have to go to that pavilion, and that pavilion was surrounded by these guys holding the guns, and those guys were native to that country.
Yeah, he not only just recruited, obviously, just his followers in the United States. He also recruited some of these people from Guyana, because Guyana is, depending where you are. I mean, I told Rosie this last week, Joe, but from what I've heard is that since the Jim Jones massacre, Guyana has become a stabilized democracy. However, even today, they still have a racialized politics. There's been a lot of political violence that's still going on, and I'm sure that was still going on as well, even around when Jim Jones and his followers came to Guyana.
Well, back then, that's during that time that you got these guys that it was some of the country was run by these white guys, and that started at, what was that called, apartheid or something, over time, that took place all over Africa.
Mm-hmm.
People were protesting even here in the United States because of some of the support that was going to certain places that shouldn't have been going to. I mean,
that never happens.
I mean, for him to get away with what he did, I mean, you're going to go to a different country and you're up here and you're from the United States and you're going to go to a different country. First thing that's going to be on your mind is you're going to recruit some people you can trust so that you know your way around.
Right.
So you want native.
I looked that up. It looks like apartheid, but it says it's pronounced apartheid. Like, I don't know why, but in South Africa, a policy of system of segregation or discrimination on grounds of race.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's also a gender version of it too.
And Joe, just quickly, Eric answered your question of where he is. He's about 1 hour from Green Bay.
That doesn't tell me nothing. There's a lot of places that's 1 hour from Green Bay.
Yeah. So
I've been to Green Bay. That's home of the Packers.
Yep. And that's, of course, obviously our rival here in Chicago.
I know. I was going to say, no offense, Nick.
So, honestly, I'm not as I mean, I am a Chicago Bears fan, but I'm not that wholly big into the rivalry or anything like that. So it's not a major issue to me. Actually, he just said he was in Calcana. I guess that's how you say it. That's what Eric said. I guess.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Now, Clip just wrote, Mr. Jones would later say that he had been frequently and unmercifully beaten by his father, whom he portrayed as a Ku Klux Klan member with a strong hatred of blacks. He asserted that he was once beaten for bringing a black friend home to play, and he also said that once he brought a stray dog home, his father made him get rid of it and then beat him because there was no food for the animal.
Wow.
His dad created a monster. That's what he did.
Well, and that kind of explains why Jim Jones was not like everybody else at that time, at a time when racial hatred and segregation was relatively high at that time. That explains why he was this miracle child for people of other races.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
But no matter what, it didn't excuse anything he did.
No, not at all.
I'm just glad nowadays mental illness is so much more out there, and there's a lot more options of ways to get help for mental illness and situations like that, so that you don't end up doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, all you got to do is just have a positive willpower, a will to live, a will to carry on, and it does wonders,
It seems like he took his position of his father and he treated all those people like his father treated him.
You should strive to be better, not worse.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I was growing up, what I was told growing up most of my life, and God forbid, I love my mother to death. She was like my best friend in the world. But my mother because they had a wicked bad divorce, my mom and dad, because my dad was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't like he was a bad alcoholic, but he would get mean to her, and us boys. But he held a job because he worked and drove for a living for over 30 years before he retired, But they had a bad divorce. So she because I looked like my father, she used to say, that that I was going to be just like my old man, an alcoholic and all of this, blah, blah, blah. Sorry.
And that probably motivated you to
I'm
be the
totally
opposite.
opposite. You know,
Yeah.
I'm totally opposite of my dad. I don't drink. You know, the worst thing I drink is this Mountain Dew right here. This is soda, Mountain Dew.
She was trying to curse you is what she was doing.
Yeah, well, it didn't work. But, you know, later on, she even gave me something to laugh about. You know, we're driving down the road because she didn't drive for a living. So I had to chauffeur her around. I was my mom's chauffeur. Just out of the blue, you know. She looks over at me. She's like, anybody ever tell you look like Charles Manson? Thanks a lot, Mom.
Oh my gosh. You
Yeah.
should have said, I thought I was just like my dad.
Yeah,
Is that who my dad is?
at that point, we weren't talking about my dad anymore
Yeah.
because, you know, over the years, my dad broke so many promises and being an alcoholic. I mean, he was my dad. I loved him. But, you know, as I grew older and things happened and he, you know, more promises got broke, you know, blood is thicker than water. I got beaten into me, kind of. Not physically beaten into me, but mentally, because you tell you blood's thicker than water, because my brother and I used to fight all the time. Blood's thicker than water, you know. But yet, when it came to being on my side, now he took the wrong side, and that kind of like, you know, like when you go and meet your hero and you're extremely disappointed.
Yeah,
Right.
because
You know,
they've
it
got
was
their
that
butt
kind of
crack
a
hanging
feeling.
out and a beer in their hand, and they're
Well,
just, you know.
this was one of those things where I was in a custody battle for my kid, my youngest daughter. And my youngest daughter lost her mom. And I was with her mom for 11 and a half years. She lost her mom to brain cancer in May. Actually, yeah, today.
Wow.
In 2004. My daughter was 9 years old. And she was not going to be 9 years old until the 21st of May. So May is kind of a tough month for us. But anyway, I was in a battle for her, you know, because I made a promise to her mom not to let her mom or her sister raise our daughter.
Yeah.
My dad took grandma's side, not my mom's side. You know, my daughter's grandma, as in her mom's mom. So my dad took her side on things. Just because he was believing the stories without even coming and confronting his son and asking him first the truth.
Right.
I mean, I've never seen a woman. This woman was, and I've never said this about another human being, but she was pure evil.
Oh, wow.
The grandma?
The grandma. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom, everybody loved my mom. I'd grow up and being one of those, you know, in high school and stuff, you know, your best friends, they meet your mom and they go, your mom's, you're cool and stuff like this. And it's like, you get a little embarrassed a bit because your friends are thinking your mom's cool, you know, in a way. But as you get older, you think about it and it's like, you know, yeah, I did have a pretty good mom, you know.
Yeah.
But you'd be a little embarrassed because your friends were thinking your mom was cool, you know. And that wasn't quite the thing in the 80s. You know, I graduated in 85. So
Well,
I had a fun time.
Now, Irene actually just put something up, you know, kind of similar. She said here, my dad was an alcoholic, but he was mentally unstable and he beat us kids up and life was hell. I left. But the war destroyed him mentally because if he didn't comply, he would go to those internment camps. So I'm betting that her dad was probably, if I'm correct, probably from World War, one of the soldiers in the Japanese army in World War II. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. See, my dad wasn't in one of those. He was in like, my dad would have been in like Korea or Nam, maybe.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So
my dad
my dad wasn't messed up from any of that stuff. So he was messed up from drinking and just being an asshole. Instant alcohol or instant asshole at alcohol.
Oh man.
Well, you see people, they drink and they turn into a lush.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they just get goofy, right? And then some people, they either turn into instant bitch or instant asshole.
Right, right.
Or instant idiot.
Right, that too.
And you're stuck babysitting them.
Lauren says that you graduated 2 years before she did.
That's funny.
Yeah. I graduated high school in 1985.
So that would put Lauren into 1987 that she graduated.
I was in college from 88 to 1990, taking police science at MATC, and then I was in the 2000s somewheres. I was at Herzing College taking networking and security.
Yeah.
Don't have any degrees. Got into a very bad car
That sounds
accident.
like my background, actually.
Oh, that's what Lauren said, Rosie?
My daughter was
And her daughter was in high school, some of the kids thought.
Your older sister. Yeah. I was thinking, like, every time I tell somebody I have an 18-year-old kid, they're like, "You do not have an 18-year-old daughter." I'm like, "Yes, I do." They're like, "No, you don't." I'm like, "Yes, I do. You want to see her?" That was why I actually went away.
Yeah, well, wait till you get my age and your daughter gets to be in her 30s or something, and then you're like thinking, God,
I don't want to think about that.
No.
She might drift away even further, like where I don't talk to her that much. I hope not. I don't think that would
My
happen.
oldest is 36. She'll be 37 in December, and she just got married.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, last year I was at the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference 2 weeks prior to that, and then I was back in Milwaukee for her wedding. Couldn't miss walking my daughter down the aisle.
No.
Oh, absolutely not. That's something you can never miss.
No. I thought I was gonna lose it though during the father-daughter dance, but I held it together pretty well.
I remember you told me about that the other night.
The waterworks didn't take control. So, but it was pretty
No, but I bet you were handing out some hugs.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Rosie.
I was having more fun. I was tickled pink during my daughter's wedding. I think I had more fun than my daughter did because I was sitting there and her mother showed up. Her mother was one of those ones where I think she got talked, my daughter got talked into inviting her mother.
Yeah.
They don't get along. Long story there. Another person that I consider kind of evil. But anyway, I'm a type of person that, for my daughter's sake, I can be the bigger man and get along with anybody, right? No matter who's there. So
especially
she knew
on that day, anyway.
So my daughter knew this, so she wasn't worried about me causing anything, but she had people on alert to escort her mother out just in case. But her mother came there with her boyfriend. And it just happens that because of who I am and the family I come from, and I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. That's where I was kind of raised. So I know a lot of people. And I mean, I know a lot of people. Well, I happen to know her boyfriend. And we ended up knowing a lot of the same people. So I ended up talking to her. And every 5 minutes or so, she'd get up and walk away in a huff. Like, and start storming off because
she didn't want y'all to like each other.
Yeah, she didn't want us to like each other. Yeah. And both of us, after the first time she left, it's like, he goes to me, he's like, he's like, I'm loving this, and I said, yeah, I am too. She's getting up and walking away because she hates me and doesn't want me to like you. Like, yeah, you don't know how much she hates you. And I said, oh, I can imagine.
Jeez.
That's funny.
But I was having fun, and my daughter found out about what was going on, and I think it made her night even better.
I guess that was a better alternative than the security backups needing to escort somebody out. You know what I mean? In a positive way.
She wasn't even invited to when my son got married 2 years prior. She wasn't even invited to his wedding. But
Oh man.
yeah, that's a badass story right there that I won't, but she
Yeah.
she did something that I don't blame the boy for having a grudge. Let's just put it that way. That's putting it politely.
Right.
And I don't believe in grudges either, but I hold a few myself. I call my
That's
friend.
interesting.
I see somebody, I go into Madison. I always worry because if I run into a certain person, you're going to have bail money to bail me out for murder. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
He's already wearing the psych ward shirt. Just throw him in there.
Hey, I'm the leader of the insane asylum.
Yeah, that's
You're
right.
the Ozzy. You're the Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, how did I do that? Where is that?
I don't know. I think Ozzy's older than you. He looks like he's pretty freaking old. He's getting pretty old.
Yeah, he is older than I am.
He's getting.
I know he's been taking a lot of medication now, because I know he's got Parkinson's and.
Well, if it wasn't for Sharon Osbourne.
Yep. He would
Yeah.
be older than you.
That's absolutely correct.
See, that's what it says on it.
Yep, and I love that logo. That is amazing.
I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna get it. I'm taking it.
We're about to get it copyrighted and trademarked.
I was about to say you could try, Rosie, but he's about to do all that stuff.
I'll just use psych ward instead then.
Our podcast, our Insane Asylum podcast, it took us a while to even get to that name. We came up with the name because Mark and I, my co-host Mark, have known each other for quite a while, and we tend to get a little crazy in calling each other names. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it's all in fun. Yep. She enjoyed it too. About 11:30 this morning. You want me to say the W word and get her all excited again?
No. What's the W word?
WALK.
Oh, wow.
Oh. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi.
I like your shirt. It's like a paisley looking. Paisley top, like a hippie shirt.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, man.
Yeah, my little boy had to come over here and hug me earlier, and he's like, "Turn the camera off! I can't let everybody see me hug my."
We got a purebred.
Excuse me.
We got a purebred Siberian Husky.
That's why Nick is sneezing, because you're husky. No.
No, it's just the allergies.
Let's see.
We had a German Shepherd, but we recently got rid of her.
Oh, check that out.
You kind of see it. Oh, wrong way.
That's funny.
Lord.
She looks like she's singing or howling.
Howling.
It does.
Howling.
She's howling. Yeah. See, there's just certain words you don't say around the house.
Yeah.
Oh, the W word. Okay. I thought you were talking about a child, like a grandkid or something like that, or like a little kid.
You say the W word around her, WALK, she knows.
Is it really?
We say that for my.
I can't. I walk around in lounge pants. The minute I put my jeans on, she thinks she's going somewheres.
There's an advantage to that though. Like if she runs outside and you can't get her to come back in, open the car door, and because she thinks she's going to jump in the car, and then you can trick her and bring her back inside.
That's all you got to do is ask her if she wants to go for an RIDE. She's smart. Siberian Huskies are the smartest dog there is. Okay, they can understand up to 270
like, how's somebody moving but the dog's frozen? I don't get it. What's going on?
It's a beautiful husky.
I see now. It's a bad.
Here, I got to get rid of the. Hold on.
It's like a bad green screen thing. Who was the other person that we talked about? Nick. Oh, now she's moving there in real time. I didn't know it was Children's Day. I feel bad.
Today's Children's Day? I didn't know anything about. Did you know about this, Rosie?
No, I didn't, huh? I
Yeah, I
feel
didn't
bad.
know
I
that.
feel like a terrible parent.
Well, I just only think of today because it's May 4th. I just think of it Star Wars Day.
She gets all excited when Mama gets home.
Yeah, it is Star Wars Day. I knew it was like that, but I didn't know it was Children's Day.
Irene says, in our house, food is a
word.
dangerous word.
Yeah, she's a spoiled puppy. She's not even a puppy anymore. She's 7 years old, 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. I'd have to think about it.
She was born in 2017.
She was born in 2017. Oh yeah, when we started the podcast.
Baby
She was born
Yoda.
January 1st. She was born January 1st, 2017.
Oh, so right at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, she's a New Year's puppy.
Knew it was May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
And she was pure white. She was pretty much pure white when we first got her.
Wow.
And see those dogs, those are the ones that are the lead on a sled team because they are the most intelligent and they can understand the most commands. They also baffle scientists because they're the only breed of dog that can regulate their own metabolism. So that means they can run for fucking ever.
Wow.
Without stopping. Now the Malamutes, which is a different husky, the Malamutes, those are the ones that you have that pretty much make up the entire sled team, except for the dog, because they're the muscle. And
Aren't they? Don't they get bigger too?
Yes, they are
The body
bigger.
size gets a
and they
lot
get
bigger because
heavier,
of that.
and they're fluffier. They got more fur.
Is it because they're like hailed out of like cold areas, like cold temperatured climate areas that they
Siberian Husky was Siberian Husky was from Siberian, and the Malamute was from Alaska.
Yeah, I thought so.
Alaskan Malamutes.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I've pretty much raised both all my life.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
We used to have a timber wolf.
My first dog was a half breed. He was half Siberian Husky and half Malamute. And I named him Smokey because he had all those black, white, and gray colors, and he just had that smoky kind of look to him. So I named him Smokey, and I got him when he was just a little pup, and he was just weaned from his mom. And boy, did that puppy love to play. We kind of nicknamed him Houdini because he'd find a way to escape as you were walking in or out of the house.
Oh, nice.
But he wouldn't go far because he always just wanted to go outside and play with the kids. That's all he wanted. He'd go up behind the kids and he'd start barking at them to get the kids to start chasing him. It was a game. They love to play games, and they're smart, and they love kids. Kids are their favorite people.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. Yep.
When it comes to either a Siberian Husky or a Malamute, kids are their favorite people. They love to play.
Yeah.
And if you really pay attention to these dogs, you'll see it. I mean, she'll play tug of war with me. You get those big, heavy ropes for a dog like that, right? She plays tug of war with me, and she really puts her might into it, and starts growling and shaking her head and all of this stuff, really trying hard. She plays tug of war with one of my grandkids. Totally different. She tries, but she doesn't try too hard. She just tries to keep the kid, playing with her.
Yeah.
She don't want.
They're also like known to be pretty maternal, kind of, or something. Like, is that the right word, maternal?
Yeah, they're a pack dog.
Yeah,
they're a pack dog. So when kids come into the house and they realize that they're part of the family and they're part of the pack, they're going to protect those kids before anybody else.
Even if you're spanking them, you can't do
that.
Bite your hand off or your arm.
And yes, Lauren, I did see your picture you sent me. Thank you.
Yeah, I like Yoda. Yoda's my favorite character from Star Wars.
I think he's.
I mean, it is Star Wars Day, so yeah, I can see that. Yeah, May the 4th.
Did I show you
He's
that
got
one?
something.
Did you do you know what those what were they called? Furbies?
Yes.
Oh, they were like Ewoks or something. Oh, wow.
And he comes with a lightsaber that he'll react to because of the sensor that's right here.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But he don't have batteries in it because he just sits here as a, I've got 2 of these. I got 2 Furbies. This one's my Star Wars one. And this
Very cool.
And the other one.
All of my Furbies look like this little gremlin looking thing.
Oh, you mean like him?
Yes, like that.
Wait.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
That's a special one.
This is Gizmo.
Okay,
This-
that's a
this-
special
Gizmo.
edition one.
Gizmo.
He'll sing
Yeah.
that song, that whistling like song.
Yeah.
He'll do that
Oh.
after time, and he'll say his name and all kinds of cool stuff. This one's real cool, but like I said, I've got them sitting on the shelves without batteries because they're collectibles. So and I don't want them to get all worn out and used up.
That's amazing. But guys, I hate to say this, but we're gonna have to cut this short soon in a couple minutes. But just because we went longer than expected,
Yeah.
just very quickly, just real quickly. Lauren wanted me to show what she sent me. It was this
The Yoda
this
painting.
the Yoda painting. This is what she sent me. So thought this actually looked pretty cool. Check this out.
Oh
that is
wow, how
cool.
cute! That is so cute.
It's really impressive.
I like that.
Lauren, did you make that, or did
I like
you?
all
Or
the
did you just-
background.
Yeah, I like the background too. But did you make that, Lauren, or did someone else did? She did make it. Wow, that's really
Cool.
impressive.
Yeah,
That's
very
awesome.
impressive.
A tribal like in Star Trek.
Thank you
All
for
right.
watching.
Well, I just have one quick question just before we get off, and this was originally because I know as usual we went completely off topic, but I did have one question I wanted to ask actually both of you guys, and this obviously is in reference for the Jim Jones massacre. Kind of put this to an end because this is something that sometimes I can't really understand. This they say a lot of times that Jim Jones massacre was obviously the worst amount of American life up until 9/11. I understand that from one point, but how can that be considered the worst American loss of life of American citizens if it never even took place in the United States since it was down in Guyana? What makes that part
I
of
don't get that either.
it? It should be, in other words, it should be referred to as the worst loss of life in Guyanese history, but not really American history because this was nowhere around the United States.
No, it wasn't even. United States didn't even control any of that territory.
I don't even think we have any type of connection.
I would say
with,
they need to word it differently. The loss of American lives in
Yeah,
something history.
Yeah, I get that it might have been American lives, but at that time, those people at that time, part of that People's Temple and building that where they did was to, disenfranchise themselves from the United States, basically.
Yeah.
So some of them people probably didn't even consider themselves U.S. citizens anymore.
Well, it's also typical. Oh, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry. Go
That
ahead.
wouldn't fall under that category then either.
See, the one thing I would have really kind of thought about was, and it's just like anything else, like when anybody moves from another country, is once you move to another country, like in this case, moving from the United States to Guyana, you may have the heritage, but obviously you're no longer considered an American. At this point, you're considered a resident of Guyana, but it still doesn't really make a lot of sense how they say it as it's part of American history because Guyana, again, we don't have any relation or connection to Guyana. Obviously, it's not even a U.S. territory. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense,
You're right.
to say it's part of American history when it should more or less be part of Guyanese history.
It just might be part of their history as well.
Well, it's
I mean, I can understand them, maybe mentioning it in American history because of the fact is, his whole cult thing started getting noticed when they were in California.
Yeah.
Because they were getting close to raiding them, and that's why they stepped up the move.
Right.
And got on those buses and started driving south.
So he knew about it. He knew that they were going to raid.
They were going to raid him in California, and I forgot why, but it was just like Waco, where they kind of got a heads up, and he just decided to bail out of there, and that's where that paranoia started. And then it just got worse and worse with him preaching, because he was believing some of the shit he was saying, even though he knew it was bullshit.
I should have mentioned this earlier. It's actually crazy to think this way, but it's like where, obviously, like there have been movies and stuff, made about, and of course the documentaries have been made. There was, you guys are gonna find this hard to believe. It actually portrays part of Jonestown in this. If you look at it very carefully, there's actually a horror survival game that was released a couple of years ago. You guys ever heard of that game that was called Outlast? You guys ever heard of it? So not the first one, because the first one took place in an insane asylum, but they made a second one, which it's in the same universe, but it's a different story, but it's dealing with these two cults. And by the end, one of these cults, I guess, failed to secure their mission in this case, and they follow the same exact way. They drink like this. You don't actually see it in the game. You just see them all dead afterwards. But they do this almost the exact same things as the real life Jim Jones did. They sacrificed the kids first, and then when their mission had failed, they took this drink or whatever, probably again like Kool-Aid or something, and all killed themselves by the end, except once again the leader, the preacher of this cult. The only difference in his case is, unlike Jim Jones, who shot himself in the head in this game, he cuts his own throat. So it's weird to see how sometimes even video games even take a approach to such a horrific event like this. And I mean, yes, they want to make it as different as possible so they don't cause a lot of controversy, but you just know where exactly part of it's coming from.
You also got to look at it from the game developer's point of view too. Some of that controversy and that PR is something you can't put a price tag on.
Right.
And it makes them a lot of this.
Yeah.
See, Irene said, I moved to Japan. I'm protected by the country now, but I've lived here for over 30 years. That makes me wonder, because she said she moved to Japan. I never knew this. Irene, where were you previously before you moved there? Because I never knew that. Yeah, and Cliff, while we're waiting, Cliff says there could have been more killings done by one person or group, but was never caught.
Yeah.
Oh, she was living in Canada.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Thousands of people go missing here.
They do.
They say, they say that about a lot of those serial killers and mass murders and suicides and stuff like that. You only know what they find for the body count.
Yeah.
And you can't prove what the killer confesses to, because unless he gives you where the bodies are hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
In some cases. I mean, but if you look back on some of these people like John Wayne Gacy, and his count, they believe that's much higher, but they can't prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Dahmer is another one. They believe the number was higher.
Yep.
Rodney Alcala. They said Rodney Alcala could have killed 100 to 200 people. And only confessed to like 30.
Well, and if you kind of look at someone, even like with Jim Jones, there's probably a lot of other undocumented deaths that may have even occurred before the suicide. So he may have been linked to other murders.
They believe that with Manson and his little cult too.
Yep, they did.
You know, I mean, they don't believe it was just the Tate LaBianca murders. You know, they believe that there was more prior to that.
Right.
Or, well, then there was there was the one that was Henman or something, but they got that guy, and all Manson did was in that one was cut the guy's ear off with a sword, and then told his followers, "You know what to do," and then they killed him.
Jeez.
You know, so actually there was that murder, and then the other two, but they ended up having the guy that did the killing for Manson in jail right away because they picked him up driving the dead man's car.
Wow.
You know, that was, I mean, they had what? They picked him up and then they let him go and then they picked him up again. You know, they there was multiple times they could have stopped some of that stuff because they knew it, but you know, but the thing about Manson and all of that and things like Jim Jones is, you know, the red flags weren't there for these guys.
Right.
You know, they were so smart and using religion in some cases to kind of hide behind, you know, or staying under the radar for a long time, you know, but they're manipulating all of these people and then eventually something's going to go wrong. And it did.
Well, you know, and to make matters worse, and again, this is one other note I'm just going to throw out there quickly just before we go, is that the scariest part, too, I think, about it is, and again, I was talking to Rosie about this last week, was that, unfortunately, even in this day and age, there's still a few people who actually kind of want to follow that legacy, because about over 25 years ago, this was featured on a show that was called Killer Kids, which was focusing on kids who committed murder. And there was this kid by the name of Simon who he was originally from Guyana, and he had moved to the United States.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was that other person that you said that was from there?
I can't remember his full name, but his name was Simon, and they moved to the United States a few years prior. And at first, when he, along with these other kids that he met, you know, at first it was just simple, like, you know, interaction. Like one of the kids, Simon apparently was a great chess player, so he played with his best friend, but he developed this group that I don't remember what the full name of it was called, but it was called the OARA. And, you know, they had moved from Guyana to really escape a lot of the violence that was still going on in Guyana, even after Jim Jones had occurred. But even living in the United States, he developed a huge fascination with Guyana because he was really focusing on political entry, revolution, racism, and even Jim Jones. So he actually had a belief and was a fan of his and was in some way trying to continue on his legacy. And they actually he developed this little group, which was kind of more of like a military type group involving Guyana. And they actually killed 2 people as a result. And it was
New Year's Day murders. It was called the New Year's Day murders.
That's what it was.
Oh.
Or what they also sometimes
Simon and Isaac.
Simon and Isaac.
That one.
And matter of fact, it's also known for another crazy name. It's not meant to be a joke. This is actually what they called it. It's also known as the Simon Says murder because it was done by this kid named Simon, and he was the leader out of this whole thing.
I get it, yeah.
Very much.
See, I think I've heard about that story, but I just didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it, you know.
Well,
Operations and reconnaissance agents.
Exactly, which was, you know, they were that type of group that, again, like Jim Jones and his cult, they thought that the government was always watching them, that they were so paranoid, and it was almost the exact same thing because he believed that. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
That's what destroys most of those cults is paranoia.
Well, and very much the same exact way he thought by telling this other kid Isaac and these others saying, if we can get you to get rid of someone or kill someone that you care about, you're close to, or even related to, that will definitely increase your loyalty to me because that shows that I'm more important to you than other people. Again, that's one of the things Jim Jones did to get people to be loyal to him.
Manson did the same thing. Steal the wallet,
Manson
bring
did.
me something. Steal the wallet, the money, or bring something. Linda Kasabian said that. She brought him like $4,000 or something.
Right. All right. Well, I'm gonna get to these last comments, and then we're gonna end this right here, because we got out a lot. So Irene just put this down. What's sad is that suicide is on the rise here. And just the other day, her daughter couldn't take the train home from school because it was a mess on the train tracks. People were jumping in front of a moving train.
I say I don't get some of the stuff that people do.
It's sad because I know, and because I've heard about this so much. I mean, it's sad to know that like Japan on many occasions has been known to have a high suicide rate, and it's just it's sad of like what they've gone through, and you go through Japan this day and age. I mean, there's like and correct me if I'm wrong with this, Irene, but I know they've been posting a lot of signs all over the place, like urging people to get help. Like saying things like "life is precious," think of your family or friends or whatever.
Definitely.
I think it's like pretty much just about all over the country, if I'm correct. So it's sad to know that it's kind of became over there. It's kind of become kind of like a way of life, but they're still fighting to save people.
Yeah, Tex Watson was Manson's right-hand man.
Yeah.
I thought that name sounded familiar. Yep. See, Eric was just about to say says Simon Says murder. But okay, well, unfortunately, we really do have to get cut off. We do have to end things because I have to get on.
Go find something to eat. I'm starving.
Well, and in over 2 hours, I got the other show, Supernatural Talk, which tonight's just gonna be an open mic night. We don't have anybody coming on.
Maybe I'll join you over there.
I mean, I can't see why not. I mean, I don't know really what we're expecting to talk about, but I could ask. So
hey, man, I'm open to anything.
We do have a few guests actually coming on starting next week, though. So
I'm a wise old man.
And matter of fact, Jeremy reached out to me, so I better get a hold of this, once after we get off. But Joe, as always, I know you've been on some of the other shows. Thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, and I know for a fact we'll definitely have
you too.
Yeah, and I know for a fact we'll definitely have you. I definitely know we're going to be seeing you on the other shows, but we'll definitely have you back on this when we talk about another serial killer or cult or whatever. But
oh yeah, I love talking serial killers and cults. I know a lot about them.
Or mafia,
especially when you look like one.
Well, this is why we put together the show, because we decided to delve into another topic that.
Oh, I like this topic.
Yeah, it is at times a graphic, disturbing, and even sad topic, but at the same time, though, it's also a very interesting one.
Hey, the Dahmer one would be an interesting one too, one of these days.
Yeah,
we did one on Jeffrey Dahmer before, but there are going to be times that we already said
there's an endless list. There's an endless.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be times.
You'll never run out of
I
those.
know a few guys that used to work at Portage Prison, where he was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I drove down and around that area in Milwaukee shortly after it happened.
Wow.
Just to kind of get a feel for where it was.
Yeah, I like to do stuff like that. Like I've actually thought about going to Moscow, Idaho for like a week.
Oh yeah, because
I've heard about that place.
The college students. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really tragic when I heard it. Those.
Well, it is. It's getting sickening. Every time I turn on the TV to watch the news, there's another killing or a shooting going on somewhere.
Every single day so far. Yeah.
Every single day.
My dad, he watches
sometimes two of them a day.
Yeah. My dad, he watches CNN a lot, and I just.
So do I.
Yeah, I just cannot. I just can't watch it with all. I mean, unless like it's actually an exciting or like an actual historic event, I just can't watch it anymore because it's just too much at times. But and in the case like with these college students in Moscow, Idaho, I mean those poor kids. I mean they were like in their early late teens, early 20s.
They were
still had their
20 and
whole-
21.
Yeah, okay,
All
so
of them were
early
either 20 or 21.
Fresh
so-
out of high school, basically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
still basically kids if you kind of think
In my
about it.
eyes, they're
So
still babies.
they are.
They were,
I
yep.
mean, still at an age where they still have their whole lives ahead of them. I mean, that was tragic, and
Oh,
I don't know what.
it's tragic no matter where it happens.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I've never heard yet of what the parents have decided because they were kind of given the option whether they were going to have this guy either sentenced to life in prison or get the death penalty. They still haven't made up their decision yet. So
they
I
wouldn't
guess,
want my opinion on some of the stuff that's happening in this world. I'll just piss more people off.
yeah.
I probably would too.
Same thing with me too. I think that'd be like that with all of us. But anyways, though, guys, thank you guys. I mean, Joe, thank you again. We'll have you back on. Everybody who's been watching, thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see some of you guys later tonight on Supernatural Talk. But until then, we'll see some of you guys to the grave and back next week. So you guys all have a great night.
Yep. Thank you.
See you
Have
later.
fun. Stay safe, everyone.